I call on the Secretary to lay papers. Item 1.
Gurmaru Lorda, Tamikur Oshikers Vid Nepeban and Misit uns Arnange and Claire Ober. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I lay before the House of Keys the papers listed at item 1 of the order paper.
Now, yesterday, honourable members received notification of a matter of urgent public importance in the name of Mr. Thomas, which I will read to you. That each candidate for nomination as Chief Minister shall make a statement, that when both statements have been made, the candidate shall answer questions from members, and that the total time allotted for statements, questions and answers pursuant to this resolution shall be 1 hour. In order to debate this motion, I need 4 people to stand in their place. I see only 3 members, therefore, not standing. Therefore, the motion doesn't proceed. We turn then to item 2, nomination of Chief Minister. In accordance with Section 2 of the Council Ministers Act 1990, the next item is to elect a Chief Minister, and I call first on the Honourable Member for Rushen, Dr Hayward.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is a great honour to be able to stand in this honourable chamber and give my maiden speech as a newly elected representative for the constituents of Rushen. I stand to propose Dr Alex Alanson for the election to be our next Chief Minister. There's been a lot of discussion about experience and leadership qualities in the run-up today. Alex studied medical science at Cambridge and graduated with a Master's. By fast-tracking his medical studies, he was able to spend his 3rd year dedicated to social and political studies and specialised in political theory, criminology, social services and economics. Whilst at medical school, he was involved in several campaigns, including the anti-apartheid movement, and later went on to be an influential member of the Medical Practitioner Union, representing them at the TUC Congress. He has worked in Israel and returned with the United Nations to teach in Palestinian refugee camps, and so he's experienced both sides of conflict in the region. He was part of the campaign that led Tony Blair to power in 1997, and then worked in Western Australia for 2 years, providing medical services to Aboriginal communities. Alex moved to the Isle of Man in 2001, and on arriving, he immersed himself in medical politics here too. He became the chief GP negotiator with the Department of Health for over 10 years and supervised a number of integrated care projects. He was elected twice as Ramsey Town Commissioner and liaised closely with central government departments before standing for MHK in 2016 and topping the poll. His record as a member of this honourable House speaks for itself. He is a strong advocate for his constituents and social justice. He has brought forward complex and progressive legislation regarding abortion and sexual offences. He's been Chair of Manx Utilities and a political member of the Department of Home Affairs and the Cabinet Office. Most recently, as a Minister, he's guided the Department of Education, Sport and Culture through a major reorganisation which has changed that culture of that department and reset the relationship with the teaching profession. The manifesto he has presented and the hustings he's taken part in exhibit his qualities as a progressive politician, willing to listen and involve all of us in the difficult decisions we'll face over the next 5 years. He brings a wide range of experience, deep background knowledge and an optimism to this chamber, and I sincerely hope he'll be given the chance by honourable members to form the next administration. Thank you.
On the honourable member for Ramsey, Mr Hooper.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Firstly, let me congratulate the honourable member for Rushen on her maiden speech, rather excellent maiden speech. I rise to second the nomination of my honourable colleague from Ramsey, Dr Alex Alanson. Mr Speaker, honourable members, today I am casting my vote not for a person, not for a personality, but for progressive policy. Rather than holding us back or taking us backwards, progressive policy moves us forwards. Now, both candidates in today's election have made compelling arguments as to why they are the right person to lead the island forward, but I find myself persuaded by Dr Alanson's vision of building a fairer island, of a just transition and of improved intergenerational fairness. And so, Mr Speaker, I commend the honourable member for Ramsey, Dr Alanson, to this honourable House for election to the post of Chief Minister.
Now, call on the honourable member for Douglas East, Mrs Barber.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. It's my pleasure to stand in this honourable House today and propose Mr Alf Cannan for the position of Chief Minister. The last 5 years has seen our island nation and the wider world face challenges that many of us had never dared to imagine. There have been times when things have gone well, and times when I think we have all known things could have been better. In a world of unknown unknowns, much of this was inevitable. We have been led by a team of our peers who have, throughout their roles in Comin, continued to lead us through stormy waters, and I wish to sincerely thank all of them today. We have seen a focus on our health services, our economy and our leadership. We have needed listening leadership, committed leadership, a leadership that recognises its own strengths, as well as the strengths of others to ensure a team approach at the time of greatest need for so many. And we still need this now. When information was scarce for those on the backbenches, Minister Cannan reached out to listen, to understand, to support and to effect change. He didn't use the inability to meet face-to-face as a barrier, rather moving swiftly to phone and video meetings to continue to engage with both backbenchers, the business community and the wider island to understand the challenges that different communities faced and how they could best be addressed. Minister Cannan has demonstrated through his role as Treasury Minister his capability, his competence and his credibility, and I have no doubt that at this point he is the right person to lead our island through the next 5 years. The post of Chief Minister is one that requires effective listening leadership, as well as the ability to consolidate strategic thinking into effective delivery. A Chief Minister in a Parliament predominantly compiled of independently candidates must bring not just to the table the list of things they will do, but how they will do that, and how they will bring people on the journey with them. They must listen and hear the priorities of all members, and seek to prioritise themes with consensus and compassion. The Chief Minister should provide a framework for strategic discussion and policy setting, which will allow operational delivery to flow effectively from it. I can't recall reading manifestos from any honourable members sitting here today that did not touch on the important issues of climate change, housing, economy, intergenerational fairness. Rest assured we have much common ground to start from. We are all here for the right reason. We all want to make positive change. What we now need is a Chief Minister who can listen to the many voices that make up the rich tapestry of our Parliament, while having a solid grasp on the economic and fiscal realities we face. A Chief Minister who has experience of both Parliament and Executive, with the strength of character to challenge constructively and ensure discussions remain grounded. A Chief Minister who seeks measurable solutions, can fairly assess success or failure, and who demands more accountability from Ministers and Executive. A Chief Minister who can be calm and measured in times of great pressure, while projecting a clear sense of vision and purpose that can readily be applied to all facets of government delivery. A Chief Minister who can serve the Isle of Man competently and confidently on the national stage and the international stage, allowing our island home to be the best it can be for us all. I am so pleased there's been no horse trading in this Chief Minister election from either candidate, no offers of jobs for votes. There is no place for that. We have two strong candidates that have acted with integrity and honesty. They are both people that I have been honoured to work with on many issues over the past 5 years. We now need to coalesce behind the right person for the role of Chief Minister, remembering that with the right leader we will all have a voice, we will all have a role to play, and we will all contribute to the collective decisions about our island. But we must now all work together for our island. I believe Alf Cannan is the right person for the job and offers a holistic skill set ideal for the tough challenges we face. I ask you to support Minister Alf Cannan for the role of Chief Minister. Thank you.
And the Honourable Member for Glenfaber and Peel, Mrs Lord Brennan.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I rise to second the proposal of Mr Cannan put forward by Mrs Barber for Mr Cannan to take up the position and the responsibility of the island's next Chief Minister without hesitation or doubt. It would be remiss not to mention the proven track record of Mr Cannan in getting on and dealing with the big stuff and the ability to take a long-term view for the greater benefit of the island. For example, the instigation of the independent healthcare review, which is much needed in order to transform healthcare delivery, the purchase of the steam packet to secure a strategic lifeline for this island, and the establishment of the Economic Recovery Group, which was set up out of a crisis but is leading the island forward in terms of what we need for an economic plan, as well as the Manx Development Corporation, leading on the proposal to establish a capital projects unit after all the issues we've had with delivery on that front, and more recently setting out the sustainable finance framework, which describes how the Isle of Man government plans to finance future projects in line with green and social objectives. These are all seriously important changes where Mr Cannan has played a central part and, importantly, worked with others. But as Mrs Barber has highlighted, I too, and most especially for the benefit of newer members, wish to frame what is essentially in the consideration of a potential Chief Minister, an evaluation of personal attributes, disposition, approach and, crucially, experience in government and in Parliament and in prior careers by referencing the months, over a year and a half now, through the COVID crisis, and indeed what the realities of the serious situations are now facing the island and what they demand. The COVID crisis demanded performance, quick thinking and careful handling. It was clearly incredibly difficult, especially in the pressure of the early stages of the emergency in those early days. I would venture, Mr Speaker, that there has simply never been a time where ministers have had their actions scrutinised and challenged to such a degree under the highest pressure and the full glare of public expectation, public fear and media coverage, and also in a parliamentary sense, scrutiny from Tynwald members. Never before has ministerial leadership and approach on this island been so publicly tested than in recent times. During the height of that COVID emergency, I spent my time, as did others, inevitably observing how different ministers reacted. The style of approach was tested, whether they were open to challenge, how they reacted to criticism, ideas or serious concerns from backbenchers. But for those who don't know, Mr Speaker, I can tell you that it was Mr Cannan that many members looked to at the very start when those early announcements were made. It was Mr Cannan that backbenchers went to for a listening ear and an encouraging approach to resolving some of the serious situations that came up and dealing with frankly heartbreaking situations and matters that got to the very nub of compassion. And it was Mr Cannan in his early speeches to Tynwald and to the island that delivered a much needed message. Help is on the way in terms of the financial support that was much needed for people. And it was those speeches that provided a galvanising effort for the nation to come together. It's those speeches, that delivery and that style and that approachability that members clearly found, and those are the marks of what the island needed then and what we need now. As they say, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. And Mr Speaker, this is what we need. We cannot mess around now. There needs to be stability and confidence in government and approach, a drive for change and delivery and well-developed policy to take account of the various views in this place across the political spectrum. Bring that together and drive it forward. We cannot have a casual approach to the direction of the island, and we must have collaboration across Tynwald. We cannot have a pick-and-mix range of policies determined by one person that are untested, undeveloped and uncosted. We cannot afford to ignore the key changes needed in government, the parts that are broken, that many of us have sat in Tynwald for hours on end hearing about inadequate policy, lack of strategic thought and delivery that is left wanting. I am happy that Mr Cannan is answering the call for changes in these areas in his manifesto and has set forward a vision for the island's future, a reason to believe for a secure, a vibrant and a sustainable island. We sure need that change and that positivity now. We need the change in narrative and tone amongst all the serious issues and end to the rhetoric of fear. As a further comfort for those who are concerned about or would set to pit the various aspects of the political spectrum against each other on social and policy matters on an island which is very politically balanced with many independent views, take assurance. There is no exclusivity over the notion of a progressive island or a progressive policy when the system itself is designed for varied input and solid social policy development with people at the heart, as Mr Cannan is proposing. So in conclusion, Mr Speaker, I hope that honourable members judge on the basis of the specific contents as to what has been presented to members in the documents from the Chief Minister candidates where they set out their stall and judge with the best interests of the future of the island at the forefront of their minds when they come to take their vote today. It appears to me that the approach laid out by Mr Cannan appears to me to be attracting support from some of the most experienced people in this House, including those that have challenged government heartily. And might I suggest that support is there for a very good reason. Like Mrs Barber, I urge you to vote for Mr Cannan in the interests of the future of the island. Thank you, Mr Speaker.
Thank you. We'll now turn to the ballot, and for the information of everybody, vote for one candidate and vote against the other candidate. One red, one green. Otherwise it'll be a spoilt paper. Voting first on Dr Allinson. Okay, voting now on Mr. Cannan. Mr. Cannan has received 14 votes. Dr. Allenson has received 8 votes. Now, I will just ask the Secretary of the House to read out the names of who voted for which candidate, and then, given the result, we will then move to a confirmatory vote.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The members who voted for Mr. Cannan, there were 14. They are Ms. Lord Brennan, Mrs. Poole Wilson, Mr. Callister, Ms. Edge, Mr. Peters, Mr. Crookall, Mr. Smith, Mr. Ashford, Mrs. Corlett, Mr. Cannan, Mr. Moorhouse, Mr. Glover, Mr. Johnson and Mrs. Barber. The members who voted for Dr. Allenson were 8 in number, and they were Mrs. Kane, Dr. Haywood, Mr. Hooper, Dr. Allenson, Mrs. Maltby, Ms. Farragher, Mrs. Christian and Mr. Speaker. And there were 2 sport papers.
Can we ascertain who those 2 sport papers were?
They know who they are. I can check that. It will take me a minute or 2.
That's okay. We'll move on to the confirmatory vote at this stage. So the motion is that Mr. Cannan be appointed the Keys nominee for Chief Minister. That's the motion that will be before you, so please vote. (21 votes for, 3 against). I therefore announce that Mr. Cannan is in fact the Keys nominee, and I wish him all the best and congratulations on the post. Mr. Cannan, would you like to say a few words at this point?
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Speaker, and can I thank my proposer and seconder for their extremely kind remarks, for which I am extremely grateful, and I'm also extremely grateful to the many honourable members who've taken the time to speak to me over the past week or so and express their views both on what they were seeking from a Chief Minister, but also their views about how they thought government should be shaped in the future. And indeed, I look forward to working with all honourable members in the coming days to firm up our plans. Can I also thank Dr. Allenson for the professional manner and considerations he's given during the short campaign around this important election, and I wish him well for the future. Mr. Speaker, it falls to me now, and I accept this role with humility, but also with a strong sense of purpose, to harness the collective will and determination of all members to do the very best for our island. I look forward to working with everybody to bring forward the best policies and drive the government to ultimately deliver and succeed and build a secure and sustainable and vibrant island for the future. Thank you.
Yeah.